What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. Today, I'll be talking about the top 10 NASCAR Cup Series teams from the 2021 season. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into it. Starting in the number 10 position, we have Front Row Motorsports. Front Row Motorsports this year took major steps and major improvements, and they also were able to win the 2021 Daytona 500. And for a while, they're up until around the 14th, 15th race of the season. Michael McDowell, who just been the driver of the 34 car since around the 2018 season, he really was around the top 16 in points pretty much the first half of the season. Now, he kind of fell off as the year went on, but we know that Anthony Alfredo absolutely struggled this year, but the fact that they were able to make the playoffs, yes, it does help they were able to win this year, but the fact that they were able to make the playoffs here, I think was really impressive and really cool to see. And I think that especially Michael McDowell coming back in 2022 to this team, I do think that this team has potential to be something really special long-term down the road. There have been talk maybe they were going to sell their organization and just run Xfinity trucks. We know they're going to have 2 cars next year, but in 2021, the fact they were able to make the playoffs this year and they showed more improvement. They've been really becoming a much better team since around 2020, and then even this year they took major steps forward and their speed got a lot better. So they really improved, and they sit number 10 on my list. In the number 9 position, we have 23XI Racing. This was 23XI's first season as an organization in the NASCAR Cup Series, a team built by Denny Hamlin and Michael Jordan, and they basically had full sponsorship for the season with Root Insurance, Dr. Pepper, DoorDash, Columbia, and other sponsors, and McDonald's that sponsored Bubba Wallace through the season as this was a driver for their organization. And there was a lot of hype for the organization going into the season, but honestly, at least for the beginning of the year, they really did not show the hype. But as the year progressed, after basically the first third of the year, they started showing signs of improvement. Later in the year, they made a crew chief change for Bubba Wallace, and they brought in Booty Barker to be the crew chief for Bubba Wallace, I believe, starting at the 8th last race of the season at Bristol, the round of 16 cutoff race. And in only the second or third race that Bubba Wallace had Booty Barker, they were able to win their first career NASCAR Cup Series race in a rain-shortened victory. And a rather big thing that happened for them is that they're going to be expanding to a 2-car operation next year with Kurt Busch coming onto the team. And honestly, for a first-year team, they had a really impressive season. Now, like I said, the hype for them was through the roof with Bubba Wallace, but I will give them this props. They did extremely well for a first-year team, and they did pretty well. And Bubba Wallace ended up having his best season overall as a Cup Series driver with 3 top 5s, 3 top 10s, and had his best average finish, I believe, at 19.7 or 19.8, which is 2 or 3 average spots in the average finish better than what he did in 2020. So this team did pretty well, and they were pretty impressive, and they sit number 9 on my list. In the number 8 position, we have Roush Fenway Racing. Roush Fenway Racing this year, definitely, at least for one of the drivers, they were really good. Chris Buescher was really impressive to watch in 2021, and really up until around the national weekend this year, he was actually in the NASCAR Cup Series playoffs. Unfortunately, with Kurt Busch and Eric Almirola winning this year, that unfortunately eliminated Chris Buescher, and unfortunately for Chris Buescher, as he got into the second half of the year, he really did not perform as well as he had in the beginning of the season. But I will say this, he made a crew chief change at the end of the year, and he actually got a lot better and a lot more consistent. As for Ryan Newman absolutely struggled this year. He got a few top 10s here. He actually had more top 10s and a couple top 5s here, which I only think he got 1 top 5 and 3 top 10s last year. He had 4 or 5 top 10s this year and 1 or 2 top 5s this year. And actually, for at least the beginning of the year, he actually was competing for the NASCAR Cup Series playoffs. But unfortunately, he kind of fell back to the meat of the field. And most likely, and now we know that he won't be returning to Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing next year. And I think that this team showed a lot of signs, and I think that they had a chance to be better. They made some big moves this year. I remember that race at Homestead where Chris Buescher and Ryan are both in the top 10, and Chris Buescher was overall contending for the victory before unfortunately falling back into the mid-20s of the field. But he showed a lot of promise here, and hopefully with Brad coming with this team, I think that this team will have potential to be good going into next season. Up next in the number 7 position, we have Wood Brothers Racing. Wood Brothers Racing took a little bit of a step back this year. Last year, they were able to make the NASCAR Cup Series playoffs with Matt DiBenedetto, and this year they did not make the playoffs with Matt DiBenedetto. Now, I do know for the fact that Wood Brothers is a Team Penske team. Even though they're not as good as a Team Penske team, they are a satellite organization, and you shouldn't expect them to be a championship caliber team. But still, you've got Penske equipment. You're still expected to contend and make the NASCAR Cup Series Plus. Now, if we had traditional points and not the win in your in system, Matt DiBenedetto would have been able to make the NASCAR Cup Series Plus. And because of this, he's not coming back to Wood Brothers in 2022. in 22. But like I said, Weber is a team that I think has a lot of potential to do maybe at some point do better. But at the same time, this year they took some steps backwards. In fact, that they were able to make the playoffs the previous year and not make it this year was extremely disappointing considering Matt DiBenedetto. I thought he was going to win, and they were a little bit disappointing this year and kind of took a little bit of a step backwards this year, but they were a team that at least performed better than what Paul Menard was in the organization, so I'll give them that. But Weber's, I expect him to perform a little bit better. When Jonathan Hasser came in and started working with Matty D, I do think he did a little bit better. I think actually a lot better than what he did with Greg Irvin. I think Greg Irvin was part of the problem for Matt DiBenedetto. But still, they were entirely impressive, and they sit number 7 of the top 10 NASCAR teams on my list. In the number 6 position, we have StewartHaas Racing. Talk about the biggest disappointment and the biggest fall from grace from 2020 to 2021 as an organization, not just in the Cup Series, but the Xfinity Series as well. Last year in 2020, SHR scored a combined 10 wins in the Cup Series and 9 wins in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. 9 with Chase Briscoe, they got 9 with Kevin Harvick in 2020, and Cole Custer as a rookie was able to pick up the victory. There apparently have been some changes to the aerodynamic rules with the wheel wells on the tires because that unfortunately affected the team this year. Only one win came out of SHR this year, that being for Eric Almirola. Kevin Harvick had his first winless season as a NASCAR Cup Series driver since the 2009 season. Now, Kevin Harvick definitely was the only bright, shining spot really through the whole entire year, where he actually would have finished consistently in the top 5 in points, which is still really, really impressive that he was one of the best drivers despite struggling this year and failing to win a race. He was really, really good this year with what he had. As for his teammates, it's a much different story. Eric Almirola had that one really good moment here where he won that New Hampshire, and then the rest of the year, he absolutely struggled. Now, as the second half of the year began, I do think he improved a little bit, but unfortunately for Eric Almirola, he just did not have a good season as a whole this year. And that can't be said for Cole Custer and Chase Briscoe. I will say Chase Briscoe, he actually also did improve. He started out the year really, really bad, but as we got into the middle, started getting kind of into the middle portions after the first quarter of the year, he actually started improving in the NASCAR Cup Series and actually became a driver that was contending, instead of running for top 20s, top 25s, he started running more consistently for top 15s and even at points in the top 10s, but unfortunately, the beginning of the year affected him. As for Cole Custer, in his second year, his sophomore year, he kind of had a sophomore slump. He really, really struggled this year, did not perform very, very well, and that was how, just in general, SHR took major steps back. Now, hopefully next year with SHR, they can improve. I wonder if Tony Stewart being pissed off before for not letting pick up Kyle Larson, I wonder if that has something to do with their struggles this year. But SHR struggled this year, and they were the 6th best team in 2021. Up next, we're going to talk about Chip Ganassi Racing. Chip Ganassi Racing, in my opinion, was pretty underrated this year. Both their drivers actually finished in the top 20 in points. They got Roush to drive the 42 car this year, and at least for the beginning of the year, he kind of did struggle. However, as the season did progress, Roush, especially in the middle of the year, he actually was around that playoff cutoff area where he had a chance to make the playoffs and had some pretty impressive runs, especially on road courses, including a really impressive run at Coda, and also finishing the top 5 at Nashville Super Speedway. But he did not make the playoffs, but he did very, very well. Kurt Busch, on the other hand, his first 10 or 11 races this year were absolutely disappointing. But once we got past the first 11 or 12 races, really after the Coke 600, Kurt Busch really turned it up and started racking off top 5s and top 10s week after week and picked up a very dominating win at Atlanta Motor Speedway in a duel against his brother, Kyle Busch. And this team showed a lot of signs of greatness in 2021. Unfortunately, they are not going to be around in 2022 as StewartHaas Racing has absorbed Chip Ganassi Racing's Cup operation and they won't return in 2022. Kurt Busch, he's going over to 2311 Racing next year, and Roush is moving into StewartHaas in 2022. But for a team that was ending their year and running their final season, they were a good team, and they showed a lot in 2021, and they sit number 5 on my list. In the number 4 position, we have Richard Childress Racing. Now, this one's going to be a little bit controversial because Richard Childress Racing did not win a single race in 2021. However, I actually believe that Richard Childress Racing was a team that was really, really surprisingly good this year. Let's first talk about Austin Dillon. Austin Dillon definitely had a little bit down, a little bit in his standards from where he was in 2020, but Austin Dillon was still pretty consistent. Had we not had the win in your in system, I believe, just like Matt DiBenedetto, I do believe that Austin Dillon would also have made the NASCAR Cup Series Plus in the 2021 season on points. And he had some top 10s here, only had a couple top 5s in 2021, but there was a lot of good signs and shows of flashes from Austin Dillon. He did pretty well this year in the 3-car. As for Tyler Reddick definitely was probably the biggest, most underrated driver of any driver this year. Tyler Reddick, after maybe had really started off the year kind of being considered a sophomore slump. Then Kansas rolls around, and Tyler Reddick racks off top 10 after top 10 after top 10 week after week and starts racking top 5s after top 5s consistently. He doesn't have a lot of finishes outside of top 20 in the final 24 or 25 races. As a matter of fact, I believe he only had maybe 4 or 5 finishes outside the top 20 in the final 25 races of the season, which is really, really impressive. And he was able to make the playoffs here and would have actually finished around 11th or 12th in the regular season points had we not had the playoff system. But Tyler Reddick was exceptionally impressive in 2021. And RCR in general, they were a team that took some steps forward this year, at least for Tyler Reddick. And maybe there'll be a team with the next-gen car that will do very, very well. And they sit number 4 on my list. In the number 3 position, in the podium position, we have Team Penske. Team Penske this year took a little bit of step backwards from the 2020 season, where Joey Logano got 3 wins, Brad Keselowski got 4 wins, and Ryan Blaney only got 1 win. This year, Brad Keselowski only picked up 1 victory. That was going into Talladega, but of course, I think a lot of focus at the time was Brad Keselowski trying to focus on trying to go over and become an co-owner/driver of the RFK team. Reports indicated back in May, and his performance declined from a really strong start to the season. I remember one point where he was in the top 5 of points really up until around the Richmond weekend, and then when Talladega came around, when the reports started coming out in late April, unfortunately, he started falling off, and his performance this time started falling. But at least he did get that win, and he was able to make it to the round of 8 as well in the NASCAR Cup Series Plus. As for Joey Logano I thought was going to win more races this year. And he only got 1 victory this year, and that was at Bristol Dirt. And had Kyle Larson and Chris Abel not had wrecked out in that race, I do think that both those guys would have beat Joey Logano in that race. And Joey Logano could have had his first winless season in Cup Series competition since 2011 had he not won that race. But at the same time, Joey Logano still was pretty consistent enough to be able to make it to the round of 8, and he did end up doing decently well, and just a shame that he didn't win more races here, but he did pretty decent this year. As for Ryan Blaney became the best driver, and this was really shocking. I thought it would be those 2 older drivers that are going to be the best this year. Ryan Blaney really showed up this year. Ryan Blaney in regular season points would have finished 4th. And he got 3 victories. This would be the first time that Ryan Blaney scored multiple victories in a season in his NASCAR Cup Series career. I've been wanting him to do this for a long time, and he was able to have his first multi-win season. Wins coming at Atlanta Motor Speedway after Kyle Larson used his tires up, and after going back-to-back victories at Michigan in a great late race restart, and also winning at Daytona in the Daytona Super Speedway race. And Ryan Blaney definitely this year was the best driver at Team Penske, and I think he could be the driver that becomes the flagship driver going into the long-term road. So I think that the Team Penske did go down a little bit in standards, but they also were able to make the round of 8 this year, and they did pretty well as an organization in the 2021 season. In the number 2 position, in the runner-up position for the top 10 NASCAR teams, we have Joe Gibbs Racing. Joe Gibbs Racing was once again one of the top teams in the 2021 season. Denny Hamlin scored 2 victories for their team. Martin Truex Jr. scored 4 victories. Chris Abel scored his first career NASCAR Cup Series victory at Daytona Road Course. And Kyle Busch picked up 2 victories. So they definitely had, I think, a few less wins this year, though I will say they were actually, I think they had maybe a few more wins this year because they got they got about 9 or 10 wins this year in 2021, and they did pretty well this year. First, talking about Denny Hamlin. Denny Hamlin was extremely consistent in 2021 and actually would have finished 2nd in the regular season points and was able to make it to the championship for this year with this team, and they did very, very well. And he was so good despite not winning a race until Darlington. It took him until race 27 to win, but he was so good and so consistent throughout the year that he would have made the playoffs regardless because of how good he performed. Let's go to Martin Truex Jr. Martin Truex Jr. came back to somewhat of his old form he had with Cole Pearn. In 2020, with him getting James Small, he only got 1 victory at Martinsville. But in 2021, he got 4 victories this year. 1 at Martinsville, got a win at Phoenix, got a win later the year at Darlington, and also finally got a victory at Richmond later in this year as well. Martrix Jr. also was very, very strong in the 750 horsepower package races and on the tracks less than a mile and a half and was really, really good this year and showed a lot of problems. And also, like Denny Hamlin, was able to make it to the championship for this year and return to his old form. Third driver, Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch somewhat came back to his kind of old form, but he really 100% did not come back to his old form. Kyle Busch got 2 wins this year, which is his first multi-win season since 2019. But I do think that Kyle Busch is still a little bit affected by COVID-19 in regards to the performance, because I think without practice qualifying, I do think that Kyle Busch struggled. With practice qualifying expected to be back this year, I do think that Kyle Busch has a chance to being a much better driver in 2022. Hopefully the next-gen car does go well for them, but him and Ben Bayshore did work pretty well together, and they did have a pretty solid first year working together in 2021. And finally, Christopher Bell. Christopher Bell moved over from Levi Family Racing in 2020 to Joe Gibbs Racing for the 2021 season. And Christopher Bell definitely had a lot of growing pains at the beginning of the year. Yes, he did have that impressive win at the Daytona Road Course and actually would have finished second had Chase Elliott not had problems. But Christopher Bell really started off the year kind of quiet. For the first 8 or 9 races, he did well. And then the summer slump came around for him, and then he kind of fell off. And then once we got to the second half of the year, he started improving. And I know that you got eliminated in the round of 12, but Christopher Bell definitely showed a lot of signs of improvement as a driver. And I do think as time goes on, I do think that he will do much better as a driver in the NASCAR Cup Series. He's young enough where I think he's got plenty of time to show him stuff. I think he'll be around 26 or 27 next year, so we'll see what he does in 2022. But Christopher Bell is the final driver, and Joe Gibbs Racing definitely for sure showed really good signs in 2021. And finally, the #1 Cup Series team in 2021 was, you guessed it, Hendrick Motorsports. Hendrick Motorsports, I expected to be good this year. I did not expect to see Hendrick Motorsports dominate the way they did in the 2021 season. Hendrick Motorsports combined won 17 races in the 2021 season. This is the most wins that they have had since, for sure, the 2007 season when they picked up 19 victories. Then they got 17 victories. Kyle Larson, let's start off with him. Kyle Larson, of course, winning the NASCAR Cup Series championship and being able to make the championship 4, picked up 10 victories on this season. Picking up win early in the year at Las Vegas, then he won the Coke 600, picked up a win at Nashville, won the race at Sonoma, won the All-Star race, picked up really impressive win at Watkins Glen. Then he went on to win later, then he went on to win 5 races in NASCAR Cup Series Plus, winning the Bristol night race, winning the Charlotte Roval, then winning Kansas and Texas, and then winning the championship race at Phoenix. On top of that, Kyle Larson, outside of the NASCAR, he ended up winning a ton of races this year in the dirt scene. Won the Kings Royal, won the Chili Bowl Nationals, won the Knoxville Nationals, won the Prairie Dirt Classic. Kyle Larson pretty much won every major event, actually won the BC 39 National as well at Indianapolis. He did extremely well this year, was very impressive to watch, and Kyle Larson did exceptionally well this year as a first driver. The second driver is Chase Elliott. Chase Elliott in 2021 had a little bit of a down year for Sanders when it came to wins, as he only got 2 victories here in the NASCAR Cup Series at tracks named America, Circuit of the Americas, and Road of America. However, Chase Elliott actually ended up finishing third, would have finished third in the regular season points, and did exceptionally well this year consistency-wise. And I think he had a little bit of a better average finish this year, despite last year being, winning the championship and getting 5 victories. He still had a pretty good average finish. And let's be for real, had some of those races unfortunately kind of went away from him. He lost some points at Nashville. There was a couple times where he got disqualifications this year. You also had the fact that he kind of unfortunately got unlucky at Watkins Glen, where he had to basically start at the back of the field, then had that flat spot on the tire. Honestly, probably had a chance to win Sonoma, but kind of fell through late, and was up front in Martinsville as well, and probably would have won more races this year had things gone his way a lot more. But Chase Elliott was really good this year regardless, and he was the second best driver of the team. The third driver we're talking about is William Byron. William Byron picked up his second career NASCAR Cup Series victory this year, and for a long time, he was extremely consistent. I think that from race 2 to race 12 or 13, he had, I think, a streak of top 10 finishes for 11 or 12 straight races. And he really, unfortunately, in the middle portion of the year kind of fell off, but then we got to the second half of the year, and he started performing very well. And him and Rudy Fiegel's relationship this year went very well together, and he's going to be Hendrick Motorsports for a very long time, as he has a contract through 2026 with the team, most likely. So he did extremely well, and William Byron was the third best driver at the team. And the final driver we're talking about is Alex Bowman. Alex Bowman picked up his first multi-win season. As a matter of fact, Alex Bowman scored an insanity 4 wins this year in 2021. Those wins coming at Dover, Pocono, winning at Martinsville, and also picking up a win earlier in the season at Richmond as well. Alex Bowman, unfortunately though for him, unlike the 3 other drivers, he was extremely inconsistent this year, and that unfortunately cost him a chance to make it through the round of 12 and did not advance to the round of 8 this year, which also same thing for William Byron. They both did not advance to the round of 8. And that's how good Hendrick Motorsports was this year. The team overall itself was just a dynamic combination. They did extremely well this year, and this is the final team, and they are the best team in my opinion. I don't think there's any way ifs and buts about it. This was the best team of the top 10 teams in 2021. So now, let's talk about teams that just barely missed the list for the 2021 list. First one, JT Doherty Racing. JT Doherty Racing, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. for a lot of the year, and especially Ryan Preece early in the year, they actually were in the NASCAR Cup Series playoffs. However, they kind of fell off, and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. unfortunately kind of fell off out of contention after the Pocono doubleheader. And they kind of fell off. And Ryan Preece, same thing. Ryan Preece, after about round number 10, their performances kind of fell off. That's why JT Doherty did not make the list. The second team, Trackhouse Racing. Trackhouse Racing definitely for sure among the 2 teams, 23-11 and Trackhouse. They were a little bit better in the beginning of the year. However, Trackhouse Racing in the second half of the year, they had a lot of mechanical gremlins. And Daniel Suarez and Trackhouse Racing, another new team, they were able to find full sponsorship this year, which was really, really impressive. But they ended up finishing 25th in the points in 2021, which is actually really disappointing for a first-year team. But they still, for a first-year team, is actually good with no expectations. And unlike 23-11, they really didn't have a ton of expectations with being a new organization. They just barely missed the list this year, but they, I think, have a chance of making it next year going in 2022. The third team that barely missed the list, Richard Petty Motorsports. Richard Petty Motorsports picked up Eric Jones this year, and especially in the second half of this year, especially in the final 10 race of the chase, they barely just missed the list this year, where they actually able to get 6 top 10 this year with Eric Jones. The reason they didn't make it is because of sponsorship problems, and unfortunately their performance in the beginning of the year kind of cost them a run at an opportunity to contend. So unfortunately, Richard Petty Motorsports did not make the list. And the final team that did not make the list is Collard Racing, and that's because even though Collard Racing won a race, they unfortunately did not run the full season. They only run, I think, around 9 to 10 races in 2021, which I think, unfortunately, is the reason why they did not make the list. But they still were able to get a win, and I do think next year they have a chance of making the list. So, anyway, that is it for today's special NASCAR team video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notification on so you're notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support my page as well. Link description below for that, and comment your thoughts on today's video. What are your top 10 NASCAR teams for 2021, and do you agree with my list or not? Let me know in the comments below. Anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's video, and I'll see you guys next time for some more great and awesome NASCAR content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.